In essence, all of thinking is a symbolic process. We think in symbols. So when we are talking about objects, we don't actually have the objects in our head. We have a symbolic representation of those objects. If I ask you, for example, is a refrigerator larger than a toaster? Well, you don't have a refrigerator and a toaster physically in your head, but you have pictures or images of those two objects, and you manipulate them in your mind to think which one is larger.
Our ability to manipulate symbols is what allows humans to reason.
Let's say that a child learns what a ball is and plays with the ball and learns the name of the ball. Well, then the child can look at a doorknob and point to the doorknob and say ball. You and I might say that that's a mistake. Linguists and psycholinguists would call it an overextension. But in a particular sense, what it indicates is that at a very young age, we have the capacity to reason analogically. It shows that our basic cognitions are searching for things, for similarities between dissimilars.
Hold it like right there.
Analogical reasoning is only one type of reasoning. Another is through heuristics.
Heuristics are what we kind of call a rule of thumb. A lot of times when we're trying to make decisions or solve problems, if we don't think about something very, very deeply, maybe because of time elements or whatever, we might think of a quick rule of thumb where we could use something that is what we call quick and dirty, and it works most of the time. Let's say if you were to smile at me, just as a rule of thumb, I might think that you're a very nice person, because my experience has been that most nice people smile. Well, we know some like kind of crotchety old people who have a heart of gold. So actually, they are nice, but they may not smile. Or we also know some people who are swindlers, who are trying to smile to throw you off track, but they're actually not nice people. But in general, my heuristic is that if someone smiles, they must be a nice person.
Logic is familiar type of reasoning. Take the premise that all humans are mortal and that Einstein is a human. We logically conclude that Einstein must be mortal. The truth of the premise leads to a conclusion which is true. We use logic every day in activities from mathematics to arguing court cases to figuring out who stole the cookies. Our reasoning ability makes it possible for us to solve problems using any number of strategies. One surefire method, when it's possible, is to use an algorithm.
An algorithm is a rule that if you follow exactly will give you the one correct answer to a problem. An example of an algorithm would be what an engineer would use to calculate the size of a beam that's necessary to hold up your roof. The roof has a certain weight and a certain size, and so with his calculations, he should be able to figure out the exact size of a beam that will keep that roof up.
Sometimes solutions don't come through careful reasoning, but in a flash, that aha experience commonly known as insight.
What Gestalt psychologists suggest is that we kind of look at the problem in a different light, reorganize the problem. And in that reorganization, we may come up with a new perception, and that new perception, the experience of the new perception, is called an insight.
This would be an example of a puzzle that requires insight. In this puzzle, I'm asking you to divide the area into 5 equal shapes. Now, as you look at this puzzle, you start thinking in terms of triangles, rectangles, maybe squares, and when you do that, you will not be able to solve the puzzle. The problem is that you are being impeded by one of the mental sets, namely language, that you use. That framework of thinking in terms of labels is inhibiting you from solving the puzzle. What you need to do is look at this puzzle and think in terms of shapes in general, and when you do that, you get this insight that the area itself has a shape, odd, without a name, but a shape. And now, when you get that insight, you can divide this oddly shaped area into 5 equal pieces of the same dimensions.
Paul had to use a similar process in learning how to retrieve his missing vocabulary.
And what he learned to do over the next few weeks and months was to find different ways to get at what he wanted to say. So, for example, when he sees a picture of a lamb, he would say, "Oh, that's a Mary had a little lamb."
Like I was trying to describe it to a guy where my brother had gone, again, there I go again, not rock climbing, but backpacking, where he'd gone backpacking. I'm trying to describe where he'd gone to, and I was trying to think of not Death Valley, say there I go again. The place where it's deep down into the canyon, and it's the Grand Canyon, and that's, you're seeing the exact sign of what I usually try and go through.
Almost a year post-surgery, he is able to communicate fine. He still has a little bit of trouble grabbing those nouns when they're describing living things, but it's much smoother than it was before.
The differences that I've noticed, it's been the ability to verbalize what he's trying to say and remember the words. Now he's doing very well at that.
I'm amazed. I don't know how else to put it.
I was never that worried about the risk of surgery. It seemed that you can always have complications, but the reward of being able to get the entire tumor seemed like a great option.
Because we took out 90–95% of Paul's tumor, he has a very small residual. It's possible that this small residual will stay quiescent for his normal lifespan. It's also possible that it could grow or degenerate over the course of the next several years. So it could be 2 to 50 years during which this tumor would stay quiescent. We expect that he'll live a normal lifespan.
Was it worth it? There are times that I say no, and there are times that I say yes, because when I've gone to the support groups, I see people that can't believe that I'm back at work, driving my car, and I look the way that I do. One guy that was having seizures 3 times a week, another person that, couldn't drive anywhere, and other people that are this and that, and I'm just like going, my gosh, I'm back at work full time, I'm riding my bike, I'm driving, life is basically normal.
And yet, Paul has said that if another surgery is needed, he would decline it if it further jeopardized his ability to think, reason, and to use language. That's how important our cognitive processes are to the human experience.